Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 16 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we look back through all of human history and give you examples of raging, insane stupidity so that you can take lessons from other people's mistakes and never repeat those mistakes again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. Mistakes are fun, and they happen a lot, and sometimes they cost an entire country a percentage of its GDP, which we'll get into in a little bit, like big mistakes. Yeah. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host, Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
Doing good. Back.
Yeah. We are. Yeah, we had a little bit of a break. You had a holiday. That was nice. Yeah. How was that?
It was good. Yeah, I'm good, and I'm rested, and I'm so rested that I prepared nothing.
We should talk about that. So we're going trying out Toastazoid. How's my favorite Welsh cinnamon roll and whatever Derek is? Derek is Derek's a bear claw. If I'm a cinnamon roll, then Derek's a bear claw.
That's
like a Danish. Derek's a Danish, yeah, because the Germanic thing. There you go. That's what we'll go with.
Okay.
I
like bear claw. That was
bear claw. Derek man. The bear claw, and I'm the cinnamon roll. I'm the toasty little cinnamon roll. So yeah, we're good, man. And Kimberly as well. Hello there, you wonderful, handsome, perfectly pleasant people. What handsome's a stretch.
What nice folks we have today.
Yeah, like these people are pleasant. That's wonderful. It's totally in contrast to the people who watched the Henry Ford video. But thank you guys so much. So yeah, we're trying out a slightly different format today. So in the past, obviously, we've done like 2 stories. The episodes have gone super long. They've gone like 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours, which is kind of crazy. And we're both kind of dead by the end of the recording. We're going to try a little thing. So we're just going to present one very long story that I will be reading from, and Derek will be interacting with. He doesn't necessarily know a huge amount of what we're going to be talking about. He just has a general name and a topic, and he will be providing us with amazing like video clips and pictures and stuff like that throughout these different things, and he will be reacting to the content that I will be presenting. So exciting days. It will be good. And Toastazoid here, there was a VTuber watching Monument with us, and I was tempted to contact you to come in and say hi, but you were probably asleep. I'm usually asleep, so thank you for not contacting me. But yeah, no, that's fine. People react to that all the time, and I'm just happy to kind of be doing this now. So yes, we're doing a new format. So my 4-hour podcast was vetoed. That might be a special one. Like we might do that for like the 150th episode. We might do like a special long thing, but it might also be like we do an episode and we intersperse it with greatest hits moments potentially. Maybe we react to ourselves.
Well, we still have Kanye to cover, and that one might be 4 hours in itself.
We haven't done Elon. We haven't done Trump. We haven't done Bush.
Jordan
Peterson. There's a bunch of people we haven't covered. Thatcher. Oh my god. Like we could do, there's so many people, and like sometimes I deliberately avoid specific people because I know it's going to take up hours and hours of time, and the one exception I made was the Alex Jones one, because I was like, I feel like this is a great time to cover this, but there's like 10 hours I could do on that guy, and I just wanted to do the greatest hits. You know, I wanted to do the, oh my god, the fucking Hotel California. The Eagles are back together. Oh my god, they're going to do all the greatest hits. That's what I did with the Alex Jones one. I'm like, I could tell you a million fucking stories about that guy. I'll just go for the big ones. So
and it worked.
It did. I enjoyed that episode so much. Toastazoid Best Moments compilation. You could get a good 5 minutes out of that of us covering your comments, buddy. Honestly, it would be one of those like short main videos that you've been around for all of them. Thank you all for joining us, and also joining us, Kimberly, one of our wonderful patrons. Thank you to Kimberly for joining us live so many times, but also thank you to our other wonderful patrons. I should mention them all now because we have a new patron. The OG Jesse Chris, thank you so much for sticking by with us. Andrew Zavara as well, Kimberly, as I mentioned. We've got Dilly Baub, who is still with us, and our new patron as well, Silent Crisis, also known as Dan. Thank you so much for joining us recently. I wouldn't say all of them. Well, they're pretty good comments. Don't sell yourself short, man. I really enjoyed most of them. So yeah, thank you to our wonderful patrons. Thank you for sticking by with us. And it's August now, so I will be sending out the August annual rewards for people who have been with us for a year. So we'll be sending those out very soon. And then I think September's the next one. And yeah, then we'll have the complete run of the people who have stuck with us for a year. It feels very special to have had 4 patrons to have stuck with us for a year.
That is awesome. You guys rock.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome to the freaking show, Dan. Yes, Kimberly welcomes you on board. Thank you so much. So yeah, new format. Derek has had a holiday. Is something everyone asked how I was earlier. I fucked my back up last week, and it's only now that I'm really starting to not stand at a funny angle and not walk, not like shuffle. I was basically walking like my 95-year-old grandmother. It was weird. Yeah. And I had the strength of a kitten. It was pathetic. So I'd lift something up, but because my back was hurting, something would go. So I'm like, oh, can you carry my ball through for me, darling? After my wife's cooked me dinner, and she's like, what is wrong with you? I was like, my back's fucked. So yeah, that was a nightmare week, but I got to tell you, I feel much better now. I had a really long walk yesterday in the sun with family and friends, and it was great. And actually, despite the fact I ache like hell today, I feel like it really strengthened my back. So it took me a week to recover because I'm old, but I'm fighting fit and ready to go. So
now we'll just sit here for 2 hours and
really seize my back up. Yeah, exactly. So the person we're covering this week, this is a really interesting one, and it's actually obviously, recently we covered people like Adolf Sachs and some people who we've gone back right the way through history, a former king of England from the Plantagenet era, from the 14th century. But this is a very recent story, to the point now where up until 3 months ago, this was still a significantly active story, and actually there's still time for it to develop into an even crazier story. I'm going to tell you now about the most corrupt person, certainly in the entire continent of Asia at the moment, possibly of all time, given the impact this person has covered. Did you ever cover Akhenaten? Is that an Egyptian pharaoh? Or is that a thrash rock band that I'm not super familiar with? Oh, right. Okay, Akhenaten. I don't think we have. I think that I recognize the name, and I think that might be someone to cover in future. We generally like to go with super modern people that we can verify a bunch of stuff on, whereas a lot of the ancient stuff is covered by people who are slightly biased one way or the other, or semi-mythical. Akhenaten, he had 17 chins because they were super inbred, but also he's a god. So it's difficult to know, but I would like to do that if we can find verifiable information on Egyptian.
I feel like the early season episode that I did, that's as old as I'm going to go, because I think that I was just writing and reading made up make-believe stuff. I'm not smart enough to bring that old of history to you guys.
It feels it's because the amount of research you have to do to verify, it has to be a full-time job. And if it were a full-time job for us, I would love to bring you absolute 100% fully verified Egyptologist facts, from Akhenaten, and whether he pissed on a beetle once or whatever, stuff like that. I would love to be able to bring you with absolute certainty, but we're getting to the point now where I found out reasonably recently that what's her name? Egyptian, the last pharaoh of Egypt, what's her name? Very famously gorgeous woman, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Apparently she was thank you, Toastoid. Apparently she was nothing special, is what we're finding out. I was like, oh, she was just the most beautiful woman, and she's just a perfect skin, and she used to bathe in milk, and people were actually, no, she's kind of stumpy. There's nothing special. They just because she was famous. Everyone was like, oh, she must have been beautiful because she was famous. Actually, she's sort of normal looking human being. So, you know, that's my problem with ancient history. So
yeah. Well,
like,
even when we covered the Halloween episode, when you're talking
yes,
about, what was it, Elizabeth Bathory, like
yeah,
how much of that is like
verifiable.
biased?
Yeah, like, did she kill like 3
800
or
people?
4 people who were like trying to ruin her and like fuck up her estate, or did she murder 300 like children and babies and drink their blood and bathe in their blood and sacrifice people to, you know, Baal and like shit like that? Like, it's really difficult to know. She reportedly had a slightly hooked nose. Other than that, pretty unremarkable. Yeah, like Cleopatra is like, yeah, you know, you're a good looking lady and you're very powerful, but you know, you're not like Helena Troy, calm down, who was also probably had a club foot and like web feet or something. But you know, we're not here to remark on people's looks. But basically what I'm saying is that history is very difficult to verify beyond the existence of print media. So thank God for the person who invented the printing press. What's his name? That Germanic guy. Sorry?
Gutenberg.
Yeah, Steve
Yeah.
Gutenberg. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Steve Gutenberg, for inventing the print press, and for being in 3 Men and a Baby.
Yeah,
no, Jonas Gutenberg. That's it. Yeah,
there you go.
You guys should do a historical figure smash or pass. I mean, most of them are pass because they're basically dead. I don't want to fuck a dead body.
Yeah.
But no, I get what you mean. Yeah, historical smash or pass.
That's a Patreon special right there.
Abraham Lincoln smash. So big hair
Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, in the Vampire Hunter form, definitely. So let me tell you about the most corrupt person currently in Asia, possibly of all time, given the impact that she has had. And it's a woman, our first woman in a while. This person has had on Teddy Roosevelt, 100%. Taft. Yeah, he was killed by wolves, but man, I'd let him tear me to shreds. But so I'm going to talk about corruption in Vietnam, which you might be thinking, you know, Vietnam is a communist country, like 100%, still a communist nation to this day, even after unification, communist nation.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So how can there truly be private businesses, and can one person be described as the most corrupt person easily in that nation? Definitely in Asia, possibly of all time in that entire continent. Let me give you a brief history of Vietnam's economy over the last century and some of its history. And this is going to really appeal to the history nerds that turn into this podcast, but it's not super funny for the people that come here for the giggles. So we'll try and
those out of the
sprinkle
way
in.
already.
Yeah, Marxist Leninism, hooray! So Vietnam is a unitary Marxist-Leninist one-party socialist republic. Say that 3 times fast after a long day in the sun. One of the 2 communist states, the other being Laos in Southeast Asia. 2 countries have in common ridiculously cheap everything there. Food, accommodation, hospital treatment, you know, education, everything is either free or incredibly cheap, hence why it's a Marxist-Leninist socialist republic. Although Vietnam remains officially committed to socialism as its defining creed, both have amazing food. Yes, thank you. Vietnamese food is delicious. Never had food from Laos, but Vietnamese food, fucking so good. Obama he did an episode with Anthony Bourdain in like a cafe there, and their whole lunch cost $5, and it was like 4 courses and super delicious. And now the building has been turned into an Obama shrine. And the whole menu is like Obama fried chicken, Obama like desserts, Obama like this. And I'm like, oh my God, they really run with this one. So although Vietnam remains officially committed to socialism as its defining creed, bunch of articles here, so the language is all over the place, I apologize. Its economic policies have grown increasingly capitalist, with The Economist characterizing its leadership as ardently capitalist communist, whatever the fuck that means, because that don't make no sense to me.
Corrupt, I think is what that means.
Basically, yes. So
not working right.
Yes. A conflict of interests. So throughout the history of Vietnam, its economy has been largely built on agriculture because it's an incredibly fertile place to grow and produce stuff. primarily wet rice cultivation, obviously, because, Southeast Asia, huge production of rice crops, and it's like the backbone of their entire like development of food over the last like couple of millennia, basically. So bauxite was also an important material in the production of aluminium. That's also mined in central Vietnam and has been for like the last 70 or 80 years. Since reunification, the country's economy is shaped primarily by the CPV, which is their main ruling party, through 5-year plans decided upon at the plenary sessions of the Central Committee and National Congress. So they all get together once every 5 years, like, what do we need to do? We really need to rebuild the roads here. Okay, let's do that. Let's have that as a 5-year plan. And that's how a lot of communist states work. That's how Russia worked. They'd have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. Kind of like your ex-girlfriend who you were in a relationship with, who's like, I'd like us to be here in 5 years. And you're like, yeah, I'm not on board with that. That's how those 5 years plans worked out. And the collectivization of farms, factories, and capital goods was carried out as part of the establishment of central planning, with millions of people working for state enterprises. There is no private business in this form of government at this time. Under strict state control, Vietnam's economy continued to be plagued by inefficiency, corruption in state-owned enterprises, poor quality, and underproduction. Because there's no competition, there's no need to try harder. You get what you get for doing the work you do, so why push yourself? And yeah, that's a problem in any economy. So with the decline in economic aid from its main trading partner, the Soviet Union, following the erosion of the Eastern Bloc in the late 1980s and the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union, as well as the negative impacts of the post-war trade embargoes imposed on the United States, obviously after the Vietnam War, Vietnam began to liberalize its trade by devaluing, crazy as it sounds, its exchange rate to increase exports and embark upon a policy of economic development. So lower the price of everything, suddenly everything's cheaper and people come to buy it from you. So it's a smart move in the short term. In the long term, people come into your country and exploit it because everything's cheaper, basically. So, and it's still that way now. In 1986, the Sixth National Congress of the CPV introduced socialist-orientated market economic reforms as part of the Doi Moi reform. Doi Mao? Doi Mi? I don't know. Doi Moi reform program. I think that's how you say it. Private ownership began to be encouraged in industry, commerce, and agriculture, and state enterprises were restructured to operate under market constraints, meaning you could now run your own small business free of government oversight at the most basic levels. So obviously you've got to pay your tax. Doormat, thank you, Tostoid. That's almost what I said. And basically you could have a market stall and sell your own produced stuff, keep the profits, pay your sales tax and VAT and what have you, but for the most part you could start your own business, which didn't exist in Vietnam after reunification because it was a communist state and they produced everything. So why do you need to go into business for yourself? You can just work for the government, but that's really inefficient. Anyway, so a bunch of small businesses start cropping up in Vietnam in the 90s, and that leads to a huge change in the standards of living for a bunch of people, because suddenly they have disposable income. Suddenly they can speculate on property. Suddenly they can save money, send their kids to university, send them abroad to learn, and it suddenly becomes a really dynamic country economically, but it's still reasonably cheap to live in. So things start to change for the good. This led to the 5-year economic plans being replaced by the socialist-orientated market mechanism. As a result of these reforms, Vietnam achieved approximately 8% annual gross domestic product growth between 1990 and 1997. 8% every year for 7 years. Really good. Wow. Yeah, that's nice and solid, steady. That's exactly what you want to hear. And also around this time, the United States ended its economic embargo against Vietnam in early 1994 because, like, it's been 20 years. Why are you still doing that shit? Although the 1997 Asian financial crisis caused an economic downturn to 5% growth per year. Its economy began to recover in 1999 and grew at around about 7% per year from 2000 to 2005, one of the fastest in the world. Nice, consistent growth. But then again, you can argue it was a communist state. It didn't really have economic growth. And also it was a very poor country. So there's only really one way to go. But it's still encouraging, you know? And we still haven't ended it on Cuba. Still, yeah. That's not good.
Well, okay. So that's solid growth, though.
It is. It is
Even when
consistent.
Went down, it was still growing, which is
Exactly.
better
It's a good
than,
sign.
say, the USSR.
Exactly. So you have consistent growth, but as you said, Derek, you know, when there's a challenging economic time, it just slows down a little bit, but you're still growing. That's a sign of a robust economy at that point, because like people are, it's not exponential growth that can't be maintained. It's not like, oh my God, we've grown 30% in the last 5 years, and then you trickle down to 1-2%. Thanks. We won't be bothering with the cheap views. Thank you. Yeah, it's encouraging. On the 11th of January 2007, Vietnam became the 150th member of the World Trade Organization. So they're officially inducted into this, despite the fact, obviously, that the communist nation joined a trade organization, which is going to really help them with trade contracts and pricing and stuff like that. So according to the General Statistics Office of Vietnam, growth remained strong despite the late 2000s global recession, holding at 6.8% in 2010. That's way more than like the UK, the US, where people were going into recession and stayed there for like 3 years. That was a tough time, man. I remember that like it was yesterday. Holy shit.
I feel like I'm still feeling it.
I think we've never exited. Yeah, when did we go back up? I don't remember that being a long time. Anyway, Vietnam's year-on-year inflation actually reached 11.8% in December 2010, and the currency, the Vietnamese dong, was wait for it. Was devalued 3 times. Yes, the dong shrunk. Yes, a cheap shot. Right, I'll file that one away. Deep poverty, defined as the percentage of the population living on less than $1 a day, has declined significantly in Vietnam, and the relative poverty rate is now less than that of China, India, and the Philippines. That's two of those names are massive world economies, yet people have higher standards of living in Vietnam than they do in parts of China and India, which is amazing, really. The decline can be attributed to the equitable economic policies aimed at improving living standards and preventing the rise of inequality. That's always going to be a focus of socialist countries, is they want to increase the wealth, but they want it to be distributed fairly. Everyone's dong has been decreasing in value. Yeah, that's just the human race, mate. These policies have included egalitarian land distribution during the initial stages of the Doi Moi program, investment in poorer remote areas, love to see that. The subsidizing of education and healthcare, also love to see that. These are really smart policies for economic growth and development right there. Spread the wealth, you know.
Seems to be working.
It does. And since the early 2000s, Vietnam has applied sequenced trade liberalization, a 2-track approach, opening some sectors of the economy to international trade. So, and that's been huge for them. Are we sure they just weren't called? Hey, you gotta watch out. Maybe they just had the control over it to just pull it back in at will. So yeah, international trade. Sorry, I keep making dick jokes and going back to like economic jokes. Go figure, under socialism, people live better. In some parts of the world, they do. There are some socialist countries, like, you know, not traditionally socialist, but like the Norwegian, Sweden, Denmark. Like, life is expensive out there, but people are better off and happier. So go figure. So they're now getting involved in international trade. Manufacturing, information technology, and high-tech industries now form a large and fast-growing part of the national economy. Although Vietnam is a relative newcomer to the oil industry, it's the 3rd largest oil producer in Southeast Asia, with a 2007 total output of 318,000 barrels a day. That's a lot of barrels of shit.
Damn.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like,
yeah.
I'm learning all kinds of stuff about Vietnam.
I know. And actually, more recently, it's part of a change in things. China is losing some of its, because obviously there's a bit of a trade war going on, although it's a bit of a Cold War, trade war thing. Basically, a lot of developing nations in Europe and the Western Hemisphere have moved some of the production and buying power from China to Vietnam and the Philippines and countries like that. So they're diversifying their purchasing portfolio. So you're not just buying from China, which was known as the world's factory. You're now buying from all of these different countries. So China doesn't just hold all of the power because they produce all the cheap stuff. Now you can get it from Vietnam and the Philippines and Laos and places like this. And it makes China angry, but it means that they don't have as much power as they did. So yeah,
I see.
You fuck with the wrong things, and that's America takes its money somewhere else, and then you're in trouble. So yeah, in 2010, Vietnam was ranked as the 8th largest crude petroleum producer in the Asian and the Pacific region. The US bought the biggest share of Vietnam's exports, while goods from China were the most popular Vietnamese import. Not so much now. They're not on good terms because of the South China Sea stuff. China is a dictatorship, not socialist. Exactly.
Yeah.
Crone, you are 100% right. And that won't last for much longer. Yeah, it's just a full-on dictatorship because it's barely even communist anymore because it's just one guy running it. He's like ruling with an iron fist, and
his community,
his kind of version of communism. So based on the findings of the International Monetary Fund in 2022, the unemployment rate in Vietnam was just 2.3%. That's fucking amazing.
And we just got banned in China.
Never mind. Winnie the Pooh. Never mind. The nominal national GDP for Vietnam, the whole country, was $406.452 billion a year. That's their GDP per year, and a nominal GDP per capita of $4,086. So that's your annual income in Vietnam. How can he rule with an iron fist if it's stuck in a honey jar? That is a brilliant joke, Toaster Zoid. That is a brilliant joke. How many dongs is that? I don't know, but it's Winnie the Pooh, so I don't know. It's probably kind of shriveled. So yeah, the GDP per capita in Vietnam is $4,086. So you don't earn a lot. Hence why rent is so cheap and food is so cheap out there, because you got to buy that off $4,000 a year, and that's the average. A lot of people will earn a lot less than that. I think the highest earners, and something I found out in my research, even top government officials in Vietnam only earn about $12,000 to $13,000 a year.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's like your Minister of Agriculture is on less than like someone who's just like started in Google or McDonald's. Even so, that's the earning power, and that's going to be why we get to the problems that we do. Besides the primary sector of economy, tourism has contributed significantly to Vietnam's economic growth, with 7.9 million foreign visitors recorded in 2015, and twice as many since then, because multiple people, since the development of the internet and high-speed internet in Southeast Asia, digital nomads have kind of taken over, and you can now rent a 2-bedroom apartment for as little as $300 a month in places like Da Nang and Ho Chi Minh City and places like that. $300 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. It's crazy. You can eat every meal out for the day and only spend $10 per person for 3 meals a day and all of your drinks. So yeah, it's amazing. Despite all of this, sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
I don't speak Vietnamese.
I know, but they speak English. And it's also a French country. It was a former French colony. So there's a lot of French being spoken around there. So the transition to English is pretty good.
I got to get on my game here. Can we get me one of these learning things? We need a sponsor to give us free stuff.
We do. Send us on holiday to Vietnam or something.
No, I just want a learning language thing to sponsor us and give me free learning language things.
That would be really cool. I'd like that. I've been wanting to get. I used to speak like French and Italian and German. I want to get back into that stuff. Like it's been decades since I was walking around Italy going, babadaboopy to the locals and like them understanding me. But I've forgotten all of that shit now. I've learned to drive since then. So despite all this positive momentum, Vietnam still has big issues. With it being a one-party system, there are huge concerns over freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, etc. There is also a huge problem with local and national government corruption at every level in the country. Vietnam currently ranks 83rd out of 180 countries in the Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Index. So proper mid-table score right there. I'm surprised they are welcoming to foreign countries after what was done. Well, yeah, exactly. Them and Laos, like I'm amazed that foreigners, but actually they're super friendly people and just really lovely. So yeah, they're good at letting bygones be bygones. We could really learn a lot from that, to be honest. Corruption in Vietnam can play out in the form of facilitation payments. So you want me to get that done quicker, do you? Just to grease the palm a little bit. They may be salty if they actually lost. That's another corker from Toasterzoid there.
Man, on one day.
You are ruling, sir. Well done. They have a kickback scheme system in Vietnam as well. Bribes used to circumvent and speed up bureaucratic processes because, man, there's a lot of red tape in Vietnam, as well as to influence decisions in what the Asian Development Bank classifies as one of Asia's fastest growing economies. So people recognize that they want to get around the red tape and take advantage of this while it's still growing. So bribes are flying everywhere. Speaking of corruption, Truong My Lan was born on the 13th of October 1956 in Saigon, South Vietnam. Her family is of Teo Chu heritage from the village of Gezao in Santo, Guangdong. Settled in a little Gezao, Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City. An uncle founded the maritime business Hoi Thuan Phat, which is like boats and stuff like that. So he starts that. A bunch of the family members come in to help him out, but they're very entrepreneurial. So Lan and her mother originally owned a business selling hair accessories and cosmetics in Ho Chi Minh City. So they have their own little market stall and they're selling like Western products and stuff like that. And people are, fashions are starting to change. And they grow very, very quickly. And a lot of people around this time, because Vietnam is expanding and people are developing like high rises and apartment blocks and condos and stuff like that, people are starting to speculate on property. And it's one of the ways that the middle class developed in Vietnam is that the government would buy up these tracts of land. They would set up leases and then people would buy apartments. And that's how an entirely new class of people came about. But instead of buying apartments, she decided to get into actual property development, which in a communist country is a complex thing to do. So in Vietnam, no one can actually own land, essentially. But you can buy a lease from the local government for like decades or whatever times a year. So it's leasehold instead of freehold. Basically, there's no real freehold rights in Vietnam, and those terms of the terms of the leases vary from local government to local government, and they can be super favorable depending on how big that big brown envelope is that you hand over the cash in. The little extra that you put in there, it's like in the Shawshank Redemption. My wife's baked this pie for you. I really hope you enjoy it. And looks in the pie, and there's a big shitload of cash in there. And takes the cash and gives Andy Dufresne the pie. And he's like, she can't cook for shit. You can have the pie. So Lan realized that by bribing local government officials, why is the envelope brown? Mostly because all the money's made it go brown. I don't know. Maybe they've pooed on it. So Lan realized that by bribing local government officials in a variety of different ways, she could quickly become a property tycoon in a communist country, which is exactly what she did. In 1992, she founded and chaired the board of directors of Van Thin Phat Group. Sounds like a rapper from the 80s. A real estate firm for luxury residential buildings, offices, hotels, and shopping centers, and more importantly for this specific podcast, financial services. Yes, this is a really smart move. So she founds this property development business, but it's essentially trying to get her foot in the door of every other single industry in the country. So every other major form of economic quick development, she is trying to get a foothold in. It's very smart. I don't know why she just tried to do it in multiple different ways, but we'll see why she focused on the financial services now, because from 2012 to 2022, Lan controlled the Saigon Joint Stock Commercial Bank, SCB. Okay. We'll be referring it to SCB from now on. Vietnam's largest bank by assets in Ho Chi Minh City. SCB was established in 2012 from the merger of 3 banks that were facing bankruptcy in 2011 during, even though the economy slowed down a little bit, some of the banks were going bankrupt. Now in Vietnam, there's a very special clause. No one individual is allowed to own more than 5% of any large bank. So none of this like monopoly. You can't even have a monopoly on the board. You can only have 5%. You can give 1% to this person, but you personally can only own 5%. To avoid corruption, cronyism, nepotism. They can't be related to you, stuff like that. But the government was so scared that these 3 massive institutions were going to go bankrupt and they were too big to fail. We've heard that before. That they allowed the merger of these 3 banks, and they also bent their rules a little bit that one person can only have 5% of the banks, but actually what she ended up with 5% of each of the banks, meaning she had essentially 15%. But that wasn't enough for Lan, who continued to control more than 93% of all of these banks, because she appointed a series of middlemen, some of them family, more than 24 middlemen, 25 people, so that she controlled 93% of these banks.
That's way more than 5%.
Way more than 5%. And the worst part was when people took out loans or when people put in savings into these banks, 93% of that was not going to the bank. It was going to this one person. It was under her control. It wasn't under the bank's control. She had the final say. So you put your money in, it's gone. It's hers now. And it's gone. That moment in South Park, that is not a good thing, because it immediately disappears. Meanwhile, her property business, which we actually have some pictures of, I think, her property business was booming thanks to rampant bribery of local officials. The company is linked to some of Ho Chi Minh's most valuable downtown properties, including the glittering 39-story Times Square Saigon, the 5-star Windsor Plaza Hotel, which we can actually see on screen now. Thank you, Derek. That looks really nice, right?
Yeah, it's got like the little glass atrium area. It looks like a restaurant in the lower level there.
Yeah. And it's hard to know truly what's going on. There's probably like shops at street level, or because there's a bunch of billboards down there. Maybe there's different things to enter. But also, like, we've got, what is that, like 26 floors of hotel rooms on top, probably a bunch of restaurants and stuff in the middle. There's like a deck that people seem to be going out on. It looks really luxurious.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably a spa. It'll be one of the premier places to stay in Ho Chi Minh City. So, I think that the fact that she can have one of those things is incredible, but she's got that. She's got, as I said, the 39-story Times Square Saigon, the 37-story Capitol Place office building, and the 5-star Sheridan Residence Hotel, where Lan lived until very recently. However, by 2015, the government in Vietnam realized that corruption was slowly destroying the country's economy and encouraging economic inequality not seen since the turn of the century. It's never enough for some people. It really isn't. And we'll get on to just how corrupt we're talking about in a bit. The country also became less appealing to international investors because they saw it as super corrupt and not a great place to do business. And also it had very tight regulations on foreign investment, which is fine. A lot of countries have really strong controls over foreign investment. But if you also have rampant corruption, it's not a good combination. So you've got tight controls, but also you can't stop us from losing money through corruption. And what's the point of doing business in that country?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to lose a bunch of money.
Yeah, you put money in, you think, I'm never seeing a profit out of that. It's a scary situation to be in. And basically, as a result of that, and also the fact that there's a growing sentiment in the country that corruption is at every level in business and daily life. Actually, nobody has any upward mobility. There's inequality now. So the threat to the one-party system in terms of people actually rioting and trying to bring it down is actually a real thing. So in 2015, the government realized that they had to take action. And they launched the incredibly ominously titled Blazing Furnace Initiative. That's, as far as, like when you hear about special operations, and they've always got random names like Orange Grove or like Christmas lights or something like that, and it's completely unrelated to like, oh, we went in and we like shot this terrorist, or like we got someone out of a hostage situation. That the name is never related to what's going on. I feel like when you're dealing with the corruption of government officials on every single level, calling it Blazing Furnace sends a very clear message to these people.
Yeah,
it's coming for you.
It's a lot like hell.
Yeah, it really does. Special Operation Shaboing Boing doesn't quite have the same ring to it, Toasty, but I think that's on the horizon as well. Maybe that'll be the next hurricane. Shaboing Boing.
Dude, that'd be cool.
That would be amazing. Typhoon Shaboing Boing making its way to the coast of Taiwan. So anyway, the goal is to remove corruption as far as possible, says Boris Hall, a lawyer at the law firm Baker and McKenzie, who's based in Ho Chi Minh City, where you can rent a luxury mansion for $1,000 a month. 5-bedroom luxury mansion with swimming pool and like live-in maid and shit. There might be some short-term turbulence, but the long-term result will be less corruption, which can only be good for the country. And by short-term turbulence, they mean executions. I'm not kidding. Just a little bit of short-term murder. We'll be fine in the long term.
Always got to be death.
It's always got to be like the most extreme punishment possible. And in this situation, I feel like they've gone, we're now getting Gen Z hurricanes. Hurricane Skibbity Toilet is wreaking havoc on the southeastern United States. You got to name it for the kids. You got to get it on brand for them kids. You got to get that 18 to 27 demographic, haven't you? So got to name them hurricanes. Hurricane Roblox is making its way through the southeastern United States. So the Communist Party of Vietnam embarked on its Blazing Furnace anti-graft campaign when Nguyen Phu Trong, the party's general secretary, defeated Nguyen Tan Dung. That's like Dave or Pete over there, Dung was prime minister at the time and seen by many as allowing corruption to thrive nationwide. The anti-corruption campaign has resulted in hundreds, if not thousands, of party and government officials being dismissed in recent years. It's a very 21st century purge, only unlike Stalin, they're not like being dragged off in the night by police officers in black clothing and never seen again. They're like, fuck off, you're sacked. It's the Donald Trump. You're fired. Okay. Yeah, it's that thing.
It's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's not quite Executive Order 66. It's like Executive Order Pink Slip, basically. So it's a little bit more acceptable. So in January, Nguyen Zan Phuc resigned as state president, and 2 deputy prime ministers were sacked over alleged corruption in the government procurement of coronavirus testing kits and the repatriation of Vietnamese nationals during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. That's bad. Fuck. So like, oh, we're in lockdown, but you just sneak in through the back door. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not good. Don't. don't fuck with lockdowns. The government is big on that shit. Speaking that month, after the revelations about the latest scandal, General Secretary Trong, awesome name, said communist authorities needed to conduct the anti-corruption fight faster and in more efficient manner. He added, "We won't stop here, but will continue for the long term." Tuang Vu, a political science professor at the University of Oregon in the US, said General Secretary Trong could now have his sights set on some big-name targets, including the former party boss of Ho Chi Minh City, Lee Than Hai, who is known as the most corrupt official in Vietnam. That's a cool nickname. Doesn't flag anything there, you know?
It's pretty on the nose. Like, I think you'd be like, no, can I have a different nickname? Can you...
Yeah. You
make
show
a
up at...
little bit more ambiguous.
Yeah, can like something a bit more subtle. Maybe make fun of my weight. You know, maybe my receding hairline. Maybe don't call me the most corrupt person in Vietnam. It's like you show up at the Christmas party and like, there he is, the corrupt guy. Hey, Norm. Hey.
Can you just call me the guy that gets things done?
Yeah, I like. The guy with suddenly unexplained disposable income. Can we have something else, please? This story is awarded, but one single yike. Yeah. So Tuong. Hai was the political boss of the Southern Business Hub for decades, and although he was given a rap on the knuckles in 2020 when the corruption busters found his committee had engaged in improprieties. Thank you. I've had too much to eat. He so far avoided any real punishment for his alleged wrongdoings. It's possible that Hai is next. He's also known to be close to former Prime Minister Nguyen Tan Dung, who may still be a target. So it's essentially like clearing out the old dude and his cronies. They're like, it's their fault. We're all fucked. It's them. Don't pay attention to what we're doing. You know, it's that changing of the guard thing. Referring to the political heavyweight Trong defeated, said that he's still targeted. Indeed, it may be suggested by analysts that Hai and Dung, cool tag team name, may have been the two richest people in Vietnam at some point in the 2010s. Given what we're about to find out, I seriously doubt that. Thanks to their alleged oversight of vast grift networks in Vietnam. There's no doubt the more major scandals and arrests are forthcoming, said Michael Takarski, a journalist living in Ho Chi Minh City who writes about Vietnamese politics in his weekly blog. And boy, was he right, because on November the 17th, the Ministry of Public Security alleged that Truong My Lan, the chairperson of real estate developer Van Thin Fat Holdings Group, had embezzled 304 trillion dong. So much dong. She's
a lot of dong.
She's drowning in that dong, which equates to $12.3 billion.
That's a
fair old chunk of change, and that's from the Saigon Commercial Bank, of which she was a major stakeholder over several years. According to the ministry's statement, My Lan, who was arrested in 2022, operated a vast network of more than 1,000 domestic and foreign subsidiaries, as well as further shell companies that took out more than $44 billion in loans from the Saigon Commercial Bank, appropriated about a third of it through ghost companies, so they don't even fucking exist and no one works for them, she and her family and associates created. In mid-November, the Ministry of Public Security also recommended the prosecution of a further 85 people, including... She kept, like, how do you have that many corrupt people and nobody blows the whistle? You know?
Like,
that's a lot of people.
She must pay well.
Oh, she does. And we'll get to the specific bribes in a minute. They recommended prosecuting 85 people, including 24 government officials and associates of Van Thin Fat Holdings Group and Saigon Commercial Bank. Besides herself, her husband, and her niece, there were 82 defendants. 45 are former leaders of the SCB. 15 former state bank of Vietnam officials, 3 current government inspectorate officials, and 1 former officer from the state audit office. So the guy who counts all of the beans was also getting plenty of extra beans on the side. So she gave them all that dong, and they were just happy with just the massive weight of the dong. So very smart. She bribed everyone essentially, except for the new incumbent prime minister, who was like, "You haven't bribed me, so you're fucked now." Dong inflation is fucking insane, especially when you get to the levels we're talking about here. It's arguably the largest corruption scandal in recent Southeast Asian history. By comparison, the well-documented, and something we covered on this podcast, 1MDB scandal in Malaysia in the 2010s, which led to Malaysia's dominant party losing power for the first time ever, involved the theft of just $4.1 billion from the country's sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
We covered that one. And that brought down an entire country. This woman stole 10 times that. And I'm not kidding, because they said 12 point. So the alleged embezzlement was initially set at nearly $12.4 billion, which is a lot of money. Like, I think we think of it from a Western mindset. $12.4 billion is the equivalent of 3% of the country's GDP, the entire country.
Oof.
That's a lot. But other officials who have run the numbers, and we'll talk about running the numbers in a minute, have put the number at much higher, around $40 billion, or 9% of the country's GDP, nearly 10% of an entire country's gross domestic product. This woman had embezzled. And go on.
Just wiped out an entire percentage of gain that they made one year.
Yeah. Just like a whole 10% of all of the stuff, the money the country made, completely vanished through bribes and theft. And to put it into a scale that might be more understandable, because 9% of GDP, 3% of GDP, there's it's difficult to quantify. And we talk about billionaires all the time, and this person's worth $3 billion and this person's worth $40 billion. And to put it into an American terms that most of our audience will be able to understand, if it would be like a US billionaire stealing $730 billion. That's how big this is.
Holy crap.
Yeah. $750 billion is 9% of US GDP. So that's how much she stole in the space of a 10-year period.
Man.
So that's a lot of money.
Just one person stole all that, huh?
She masterminded it, and there were 84 other people helping her. Stole the equivalent of $730 billion. That's, I don't think we'll ever see. I mean, we've heard of Bernie Madoff, we've heard of Ponzi, we've heard of a bunch of other people stealing money, including the Malaysian businessman. No one is going to top this. No one's going to ever be able to top 9% of an entire country's GDP. That's an insane amount of money. So among the many allegations against Truong My Lan and her associates were accusations that they bribed investigators for years to get them to overlook Saigon Commercial Bank's financial discrepancies. These included bribes reportedly paid to the then chief of the State Bank of Vietnam's Inspectorate and Supervision Department. This was a total regulatory failure, said Zachary Abutza, a professor of national security strategy at the U.S. National War College in Washington, who added it should raise questions about the business practices of other banks too, because banks do business amongst themselves. They do business with each other. They provide loans. They provide backing for this, credit arrangements, stuff like that. There's no way they weren't affected, or at least partially in on it, or possibly doing a similar thing on a much smaller scale. So we talk about 9% of a country's GDP. If you bring in the other banks, it could be double figures. So
yeah, well, I'm having a hard time not just kind of thinking about what's there, I don't know. There's there's 800 billionaires maybe in the US, right?
Right, yeah. It's quite a few, surprising amount.
2020, they stacked $5 trillion to their wealth.
That's so much during like one of the toughest economic periods in human history. That's
I mean,
a crazy
they
amount
didn't
of money
steal it.
per se.
I don't know how they earned it.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone
They
earns that kind of
acquired
money.
it.
Yeah, like it to the point where like I'm currently in the process of trying to launch a little side venture, and like I'm thinking that maybe at the top end I get an extra $50 a day out of it as like, and I that would be life changing for me. Like an extra $50, are you kidding me? An extra $50 a day would be life changing. And I just know that if I earned that extra $50 a day out of this little side business, I'd get the fucking government knocking on my door saying, where are you getting this money? You already have a full-time job. How are you earning this money? Meanwhile, billionaires are adding like their entire wealth onto their existing wealth every year through entirely weird and crazy ways. Yeah, I stole all the money I have. I did too, if I'm being honest. You know, I've stolen a living my entire life. I don't think I'm that talented, so that's my version of stealing. But yeah, it's and we're going to get to essentially people turning a blind eye to corruption and theft. And it's still, I mean, we know it happens, right? I mean, I found out the other day, and this is something that I didn't realize. So Radiohead, one of my favorite bands of all time, they're not really doing the Radiohead thing anymore. Tom York and the guy who writes all the music and who has done soundtracks like There Will Be Blood and Suspiria, Johnny Greenwood, they've spun off and formed another band called The Smile. And The Smile produced really interesting music. It's like a natural continuation of Radiohead's music. And they did this beautiful song earlier this year called Friend of a Friend. And it's like a little bit like psychedelic Beatlesy at points. And it's got a really cool beat. And the music video is really cool because it's just them performing it in front of like kindergartners who have no idea that like that's the dude from Radiohead. He sold 30 million albums. He's like changed music. They're like, who's this guy with a wonky eye that's singing to us? So I'm listening to this song, and the song's like, I can go anywhere that I want. I just got to turn myself inside out and upside down. And like at the end of the song, it goes, all of that money, where did it go? Where did it go? Somebody's pocket, a friend of a friend. Loose change. And I was like, what is this song about? And I looked into it because it's super cheery and upbeat and a bit weird. And it's, I read it and I was like, oh my God, that makes complete sense now. The song is about the various worldwide COVID lockdowns of that period and how you could go anywhere you want as long as you follow this rule and this rule and this rule. And like, you could do anything you wanted, and friends meeting in the same places, and like it all feels upbeat and jolly and stuff, and you get used to the normality, and then the music gets really weird and ominous and kind of a little bit crazy, and you feel like you're going insane. I was like, wow, that's a really good interpretation of how lockdown felt. Like, oh yeah, it's like normal, but oh my God, I'm losing my mind here. And then the bit at the end, all of that money, where did it go? Where did it go? Someone's pocket of a friend is specifically about the PPE scandal in the UK, where a bunch of Tory party donors were suddenly getting contracts for like providing medical equipment for hospitals and COVID drop-in centers, and they just never delivered on these like $300 million contracts that just suddenly disappeared and vanished. So I was like, Tom York's written a song about corruption and COVID lockdowns. I was like, that's fucking amazing. And it's the cutest song, honestly.
You know, that's amazing. And it
really is
way more insightful than Blink-182's.
Did they do a lockdown song?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that. First of all, I didn't know they'd recorded any new material. I thought they were just touring the greatest hits now.
Yeah, no, they've got One More Time is another great song they got.
Okay.
They got their newest album's really good, but their COVID song
is it a bit on the nose?
It's not great, but
okay. I would recommend. So there's I mean, I would recommend anything Tom York does and Johnny Greenwood. They're fucking geniuses. Like the soundtrack to There Will Be Blood is amazing, and you can tell that Johnny Greenwood is this like he's been hoarding this music in his brain for 20 years or whatever. But the Smile songs that stand out, Friend of a Friend, because it's like, it's cute, it's upbeat, but then it goes psychedelic and weird, and you're like, I think I might be going insane. And then it goes normal and cute again. And then there's this other song called Open the Floodgates, which is about, it's this super relaxing, calm, beautiful, ethereal song. And it's about Radiohead fans pestering Tom York to constantly stop being so fucking miserable and write upbeat music and get to the chorus and stop writing boring music. And then he's like, he goes into like how he feels when he's writing songs and how it's like super personal and he's like bearing his soul. And they're like, shut the fuck up and play the classics, you bastard. And he's written a song about it called Open the Floodgates. And it's, again, the music to it, it's so beautiful. I can't stress those two songs by The Smile. So amazing. But also they've had songs that have been featured in like Peaky Blinders and stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off track about a band I like.
But that's hey, that's what people like about us, honestly, right?
We don't stay on course.
Well, and seriously, the people that are on Patreon, they know we've got the whole never-ending tangent thing, and that's exactly what it is there. So sneak peek for people if you want that sort of stuff.
We just tangented the shit out of that. So if you like our tangents, then go onto our Patreon. We do one of those a month, and it's like an hour and a half long, and we don't stick to any subject. Anyway, check out The Smile. They're amazing, particularly Friend of a Friend, because it's about corruption in government forces, and the fact that someone has written a song about that is kind of amazing to me. So also, yeah. So getting back to Thwang Mai Lan. So she was arrested. It's called a complete failure in regulatory things. And basically, if Lan could bribe regulators with $5.2 million at a time to overlook non-performing loans and other criminal behavior at the Saigon Commercial Bank, why not other banks? So to put things into perspective for this, the average wage of a top government official in Vietnam, as we've mentioned earlier on, is $1,000 a month, meaning $5.2 million, and that was the figure. It would be 5 million. She'd like, here you go, here's 5 million, shut your fucking mouth. That's multi-generation changing levels of money there. That's not like, oh my god, I've won 50 grand on the lottery, I can pay off a huge chunk of my mortgage. That's life-changing. This is like your family is never going to be poor again for like 8-9 generations in this country.
What do you do with that? How do you explain that? Do you go to work the next day?
We'll get to what she did in a minute, but like, I guess you have to keep going to, you have to put it in cash. You have to launder the absolute shit out of that. You suddenly buy a car washing business.
Ain't that some shit though? To be, you're a billionaire, you're a millionaire, and you just got to keep going to work because you can't spend it.
But you put in no effort. You like show up to work. You've got a day bed in your office, and you just fall asleep on that. And like, you need to come in. Oh, I'm just having part of the creative process. Don't question my methods. That's why I'm so rich. So yeah, $5.2 million was her standard bribe per official, and given that she stole at least 12.3 billion, and probably more like 40 billion, like who's gonna, like, 5 million is nothing. That's like, here you go, thanks for opening the door for me, kid. Here's $10,000. Like, oh my god, I'm set for life, thank you. It's essentially like bribing a government official in the US with $100 million. Like, your family is set for life, for generations of wealth now, right? You can buy land. You never have to worry about money ever again. You never have to work. That's it. You know, you could gamble it all away and still die wealthy, you know, essentially.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge thrown down. All on black. It was discovered during her trial. And this is, you know, we talked about, how do you make that kind of money look? How do you launder it? What do you do with it? Where do you keep it? During her trial, because they raided all of her properties. She's living in this like luxury apartment, and she's got houses and properties and all this, the usual stuff that you expect a successful business person to have. But in one of her houses, her main house, there was $2.3 billion in cold hard cash stashed in the fucking basement of her main house. It weighed 2 tons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So reinforced concrete
coins?
in the basement. Like doubloons or something. So one of because they were a bunch of photographs taken. Apparently, I haven't seen them, but one official described stacks of cash going from the floor to the ceiling. So essentially, she'd like, we've reinforced the concrete of this ground, but I just want to make sure we've got another pillar here just for like structural stability. Let's make it entirely out of cash. We've got enough money to go around now. So her basement had $2.3 billion in cash just lying around in her basement, stacked floor to ceiling. That's how like brazen and like just lazy she got. She didn't even have most of it in a safe. It's just fucking bundles of cash lying around.
That's some like now I'm drawing a blank. That's some Narcos stuff.
It really is. That's like fucking Scrooge McDuck diving into his pool of money levels of insanity, right?
Man, I can't find any pictures of the money that they found in her basement. It's kind of bumming me out.
Picture like one of those bull pen things, only it's cash up to your neck. That's what we're talking about. He's going, oh my god, that scene in Breaking Bad when like just lie back, the guy lies back on the mountain of cash, and Bill Burr's in the scene as well, and they both lie back on the mountain of cash. That's what we're talking about here. Only multiple like bundles of cash like that, crates of the stuff in her basement. And interestingly, pretty much the only thing that outweighed the 2 tons of cash that they found, wish I was her housekeeper. Like, I mean, you just pocket like, oh, 50 grand's gone missing. Like, how is she going to notice, when she's got 2.3 billion?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take this wad and I'll put it in my pants. She's not going to check. I don't care.
Would they can they report you for theft if you're stealing from somebody that stole all that money?
I don't think they can. I think that's like, doesn't it cancel it out or something? I don't know. I think you would be pocketing at least $1,000 a day every day. And you'd be like, I need to clean more. That's
the thing is, I bet you like the people that work for her had to have been paid well. If you're doing that kind of dirt, you've got to just be taking care of people. Otherwise, they're going to eat you.
Exactly. And I feel like as well, obviously a bunch of these officials have been arrested. 85 people have been arrested. I really hope that the cleaning staff, the fucking gardener, the cook, the nanny, whoever she had working with her, I just hope that they would just let them go. Like, these people were getting paid exorbitant amounts of money to turn a blind eye. Don't arrest them, because that's just what they've got to do to make ends meet. Just let those people go. Don't put any pressure on them. Sure, they probably knew something and maybe they could have said something, but like, this woman has kill you and your family levels of money, right? So when are you going to say anything against someone like that?
Yeah.
I don't want to say that she did that, because there's no indication that she did, but that's the kind of money we're talking about here.
At some point, though, when you have a job and you're working for somebody, like, you just think, I got a good job and I'm getting paid well.
Exactly. Like, you do what you've got to do in the world that we live in to survive. So the officials who were part of this scheme that stole money from super poor people in Vietnam, fuck them. They basically deserve everything they're going to get. The people who were tending to her garden and cleaning her house, leave them alone. Like, they have nothing to do with this. They're just sort of tangentially involved, and they'll be fine now. Like, just don't pressure them. Anyway, the money in the basement was only outweighed, and I can't believe we're going to outweigh $2.3 billion in cash. It was outweighed by the sheer mountain of evidence against her, because this woman left a paper trail like a fucking puppy wiping its arse on your carpet after it's taken a dump. Like, that's how obvious this was. She didn't cover her tracks well at all. It was an open secret that everyone knew about, including the mainstream media and even people in the fucking town. They're like, oh, here she comes, the corrupt one who's stealing our money. Everyone knew. So the mountain of evidence against her resulted in 2,700 people being summoned to testify against her. Basically everyone you've ever shaken hands with at that point.
It's like an entire town's worth of people. Like, the place where my dad lives has like three, like, divide that by 3, and that's the population of where he lives.
Yeah, like the town my dad lives in has like 200 people. So that's like 10 times that. Rich people are stupid naturally. Look at Musk, for instance. I mean, yeah, there is a level of disconnect between reality and how they should be behaving that's just common when you reach a certain level of wealth. J.K. Rowling, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg on this fucking charm offensive with these videos with him with like MMA fighters. No one's fucking buying it, you robot looking weirdo. Anyway, so they called 2,700 people to testify. 10 state prosecutors were involved in this case. 200 lawyers for the prosecution. Basically every lawyer in like that city was involved in the prosecution. And this is the best part. 104 boxes of evidence weighing a total of 6 tons were brought in during this month-long trial.
Wow.
So fuck that 2 tons of basement money. Here's 6 tons of documents proving your guilt. Like,
That's
fuck.
man.
And I think we've got a great picture here of her during the initial days of the trial, because as the trial goes on, her appearance radically changes. Like here, she's wearing lipstick, she's done her hair, she's wearing makeup, and she's like surrounded by guards, like scary looking guards too. But as the trial goes on and she realizes she's in serious trouble, her disappearance changes radically, and she is not done up, or she just looks a complete mess, apparently. Lan didn't plead guilty and didn't show any remorse. Thian Nhan newspaper cited the prosecutors as saying last month, while demanding the death penalty on the charge of embezzlement. The consequences are extremely serious and irreparable, and therefore there must be a strict punishment for Truong Mai Lan and remove her from society, it added. She is responsible for tens of thousands of people losing not just their life savings, but many generations worth of wealth and finances as well. Businesses were destroyed. People will never recover from this. Entire swaths of the middle class and independent businesses have been completely destroyed by this one person's complete monopoly over banking and utter levels of embezzlement. All 85 defendants were found guilty after the trial and given sentences ranging from basic probation, so people who knew and didn't say anything, they just got probation. I'm okay with that, to be honest. Like, you don't need to send those people to prison. And this is her towards the end of the trial, just looking like she's given up. She realizes she is completely fucked. Bless her. And it's starting to show like that's when it ages you. So all 85 defendants were found guilty, given sentences ranging from probation to life in prison. Interestingly, not her husband or niece. They weren't given life in prison. Like, it was mostly the government officials and local government officials that were given life in prison, basically to send a message. However, the worst was saved for Lan herself, who on the 11th of April 2024, so only a few months ago, she was sentenced to death by lethal injection for embezzlement. Something I never thought I'd say. You know,
that's wild.
It is, isn't it? I mean, I know it's a crazy amount of money, an amount of money I never thought a human being could ever possibly embezzle, although I'm sure it's happened and we've never heard about it. But $44 billion, 9% of a country's GDP. It's an incredible amount of money. But I never thought in my life I would ever read or say the sentence, death by lethal injection for embezzlement. It sounds crazy to me. You know?
I like, as much as I feel like that's absolutely horrible and ridiculous for her to have stolen that much money and ruined that many lives and probably been responsible for a good amount of death because of the stolen money.
Yeah.
I don't know that she was directly responsible for death because of the stolen money, and death because of stolen money is not a sentence that I think is a thing that should be a thing.
Yeah. And as far as, because we're talking about punishment here, right? And I know why this sentence has been handed down, and we'll get to that in a second. But as far as a punishment goes, because that's effectively what a large portion of the sentence is meant to be, I feel like a life in prison without the possibility of parole is as bad as it should ever really get for a crime like this. But then again, what they're saying is there is no remorse. She has shown no emotion throughout this entire trial, and she needs to be removed from society, is literally what they've said there. I feel like because who wants to go to prison in Vietnam? I'd imagine it's not a great time. So, and a lot of people in there will be some people in those prisons that will know people in the real world whose lives have been affected by this woman. I'd imagine they're not going to make her life easy when she's in prison. Give her life in prison. I understand that. There is maybe a possibility of rehabilitation, but she's 67 years old. If you gave her 10, 15, 20 years, which I feel is an entirely appropriate sentence for this kind of level of criminality, she's going to die in prison. That's just going to happen, right? So
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know,
but
to
death
me,
by lethal injection.
To me, it feels like there has to be some, like, that doesn't give anything back to society from which she's taken so much.
Exactly.
Like, there's no justice there. There's no restitution. There's like, do the people get their money back? Does anybody get anything from this? Could they maybe have her, like, the life in prison, do stuff to give back to the go? You know what? You got to go work as a building official for the rest of your life now for no salary. And
exactly,
here you go.
I mean, forced labor is one thing, but like, I feel like that you can't abandon humane approaches to punishment. It can't be a thing. I know a lot of people say lock them up and throw away the key. That's no way to have a world. There's no, you have to give people the opportunity to at least repay. And kind of what they've done here, and this is interesting because her husband and her niece were sentenced to 9 and 17 years respectively. So they got sentences I would expect from this type of crime, right? Embezzlement, 9, 17 years. I understand that. It's a huge amount of money and they've destroyed lives. Those sentences I understand. Maybe 9 years might be a little bit on the low side for me, but it's the niece. She's young. She may have just been like operating a shell company. In that case, that's fine. 9 years is enough. The verdict requires her to return $27 billion. As some prosecutors say, may never be recovered. So that they think that's optimistic to think that, like, even if you took control of all of her holdings, all of the companies, all of the buildings, all of that fucking money in the basement, you're still not going to get anywhere near $27 billion. Some believe the death penalty is the court's way of trying to encourage her to return some of the missing billions. So what they're effectively saying is, we've sentenced you to death, but if you hand back most of that money that you've stolen, 30, 40 billion, whatever it is, then maybe you don't keep the death penalty. Maybe you just get 17 years in prison, maybe. But I think what this is really about, and look, let's not let's not kid ourselves here. This is sending a message to corrupt officials and corrupt business people in Vietnam. You do not fuck with the Communist Party, and you do not steal from us. You do not put people in financial peril, and you do not make us look bad. That's what this sentence is about. That's, if you steal from us, you die, is effectively this message.
Yeah. Shit, man.
It's kind of crazy, and there's more to this, so I'll read it to you and we can go into a bit more detail afterwards. So questions are also being asked about why she was able to keep on the alleged fraud for so long. I'm puzzled, says Lee Hong Hyup, who runs the Vietnam Studies program at the ISEAS, Yusof Isaac Institute in Singapore, because it wasn't a secret. It was well known in the market that Truong Mai Lan and her Van Thin Fat group were using SCB as their own piggy bank to fund the mass acquisition of real estate in the most prime locations. It was obvious that she had to get money from somewhere, but then it is such a common practice. SCB is not the only bank that is used like this. So perhaps the government lost sight because there were so many cases in the market. David Brown believes she was protected by powerful figures who have been dominating business and politics in Ho Chi Minh City for decades. And he sees a bigger factor in play in the way this trial is being run, a bid to reassert the authority of the Communist Party over the freewheeling business culture of the South. What Nguyen Phu Trong and his allies in the party are trying to do is to regain control of Saigon, or at least stop it from slipping away. Up until 2016, the party in Hanoi pretty much let this Sino-Vietnamese mafia run the place. They would make all of the right noises that local communist leaders are supposed to make, but at the same time, they were milking the city for a substantial cut of the money that was being made down there. At 79 years old, party chief Nguyen Phu Trong is in shaky health and will almost certainly have to retire at the next Communist Party Congress in 2026, so less than 2 years away, when new leaders will be chosen. He has been one of the longest-serving and most consequential secretarial generals, restoring the authority of the party's conservative wing to a level not seen since the reforms of the 1980s. He clearly does not want to risk permitting enough openness and questions to undermine the party's hold on political power. What he's saying is they had to do this, otherwise it's the end of communism in Vietnam. So they were worried about an Arab Spring situation, which happened in Egypt because of rampant corruption and dictatorship. So if you let that go on long enough, people rise up. So the way you do it is you find the most obviously corrupt person in the country, you tell them that they're corrupt, you take their money back, and then you kill them. Basically is what's doing. And as pointed out as by C. Cron here, capitalism rooming in the government, it's a nascent capitalist country. They've only really had capitalism for 40 odd years, and they've let the corruption that already existed before capitalism come in get hold into the capitalist systems, and as a result, you've got someone stealing $40 billion worth of people's money, 9% of the GDP of the country. And now they're being put to the sword, literally. And that's what you get when you don't have levels of checks and balances and, you know, proper corruption checks in a country.
Yeah,
and that
putting their thumbs on the scale.
Exactly. And that's Truong My Lan, who is probably the most corrupt person in Southeast Asia, at least in the last 30 years, possibly since the I don't know, the Industrial Revolution, maybe. I mean, $44 billion. That's a significant amount of money. What are your thoughts on this? Because there's a bunch of stuff at play here.
I mean, initially, I've got to think that the reason that there was like no remorse there is because she just thought she was doing business and earning money.
Possibly, yeah. She just thought, well, everyone else is doing it. Every other bank I do business with, they do the same thing as well. So it must just be normal business. But yeah, is Vietnam in any kind of trouble on the world stage because of her? Yes, because not only they introduced this burning furnace thing as a way of rooting out corruption. And look, we've got a handle on corruption. But actually, the level of corruption that has been uncovered in this process has made a bunch of people go, we do not want to go anywhere near this country if there's this level of corruption in there. So it's in the short term, it's actually slowed down investment in Vietnam. Long term, it'll probably be better off for them. But you don't see this level of corruption being uncovered in any country, except maybe Bernie Madoff. But like even that didn't come anywhere near this.
Oh,
like that is crazy levels of money. So in the short term, people have gone, oh my God, this is the biggest level of corruption ever. But actually, it's probably not, you know? So anyway, carry on with what you're saying.
Well, I mean, it's along the lines of like what you were saying is she probably just became detached, thought, okay, this is a new way of making more money. I need to make more money. And that you start chasing that exponential growth and that profit. And, you know,
it's hard to stop.
That's so much money at some point.
Yeah.
You just got to be like, well, what the hell do I need this much money for? I mean, obviously I need it because I've got to pay 5.2 million to this guy and 5.2 million to that.
Yeah.
But what the hell?
I mean, when you've got so much money that your basement is full of it, I get I feel like the acquisition of wealth, like when you find a way of doing it, even if it's completely obviously corrupt and terrible, it's kind of like any other addiction in that you don't see it after a while. You need other people to come in and say, what the fuck are you doing? And just shake you back to reality, because like you realize that you started on a market stall selling beauty products with your mother, right? Your basement is full of cash that you've stolen. You're fucked. And they can't see that because they've been doing it so long, and they've got so many people around them telling them how amazing they are and how successful they are and how good they are, that actually it's a problem. But it takes someone from the outside to come in and say, you fucked up badly here.
See, that's the thing, is anytime somebody from the outside comes in and says that, they're like, shh, here.
5 million. Take this, be quiet and go away. Oh, really? Thank you. Yeah. You're still fucked up. She's another 5.2 million.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go away now.
Yep.
You know, that's kind of what happens in this situation. And I guess it was at a point where Vietnam was like, listen, we're getting, the IMF are looking at us, Interpol are looking at us, these major, the UN, you know, we're suddenly becoming seen as being a corrupt company. So the one guy at the very top of the country is like, okay, maybe we need to do something now. But everyone else below him is like, oh my God, my fucking pockets are full. What am I going to do? Like, I'm in trouble too. So
start giving it away, guys.
Yep.
Put it back.
You know,
put it back.
I know we're a communist nation, but apparently Christians think that you can't take it with you. So why don't we start giving it away? It's a weird situation because, look, this is a terrible financial crime, and I'm all for billionaires and scumbag thieves who have ruined thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people's lives getting their comeuppance. I do not believe in the death penalty. I do not think it is an appropriate punishment for anything. I also think that the Communist Party has a significant portion of blame for this, because they could have shut this down decades ago. You know?
Yeah. Wake up. Just pay attention to what you're doing, guy.
Do your fucking job. And this doesn't happen, you know? But anyway, what's your score for Truong My Lan, who stole 9% of a country's GDP?
I don't even know how to score this, because obviously she's not dumb.
No, she's clearly quite good at it.
The greatest embezzler of all time.
The problem is that people know who she was. Like, if she was just a mysterious figure, like you hear in criminal organizations, she gets away with this. You know,
the guy in Malaysia disappeared. He's gone. He's not caught. He's not death penaltied.
No, he is not. And the crypto queen lady who stole all that, she fucking disappeared too.
She might be in pieces somewhere.
Yeah, she might be at the bottom of some ocean,
but
somewhere.
Maybe she's not. She might be kicking it somewhere. So,
or that other guy who had a cryptocurrency and went out to India to build villages and then died of complications from Crohn's disease. I read that headline. I was like, I have been shitting myself to death for 8 years. He didn't die of that. I'm promising you he didn't. So these people have stolen money and they've gotten away with it, basically.
I don't know how to rate this.
It's a tricky one. Like, I guess you rate her and then the government of Vietnam, please don't kill us. So
I want to go for a vacation there, so I'm not rating them at all.
I just want to point out as well, like, we've been taking the piss out of corruption in Vietnam. It is still a fucking amazing country with wonderful people, great food, great places to stay, really lovely resorts, and you can go and live out there like a king for $300. There was a video I saw of a YouTuber who tried to spend $1,000 in a week in Vietnam, and he stayed on a mega yacht, which was $280 a night, and he couldn't even get through $1,000. Yeah, on a mega yacht with like 7 other people, the dining room, swimming pool, golf, all this shit, kayaking,
connection.
$280 a night. Like, it's fucking insane. So please do not take this as a bash at Vietnam, because actually these people have suffered through decades of colonial rule and the Vietnam War and apparently endemic corruption, but actually it's a lovely place full of lovely people, great food, and a great place to go on holiday. I spoke to someone who I tried to get involved in one of our clients' podcasts recently. They are living out in Da Nang right now, and they're living in a top level apartment. What's that called again? The penthouse
Yeah.
level with 4 bedrooms. They're paying $500 a month, all
Okay,
inclusive.
how good is the internet?
She had high-speed broadband.
Okay.
I was like, what's your broadband out there? She's like, it's 40 megabits a second download. I was like, that's enough for me. I don't care about the rest. Like $500 a month in Da Nang. And I was like, how many restaurants? She was like, oh, yeah, you can go out and spend like $10 a day and you never have to
How
cook
long
for
can I
yourself.
stay on a visitor visa?
Oh, she's out there for 6 months at a time.
Aha.
Yeah, because it's like the Ho Chi Minh City and Da Nang and stuff. It's like there are, what are they called? The people who work and go and what are they called? I used it earlier on in the
Digital nomads. Yeah.
Digital nomads. Yeah, they like barely move. Some of them are still there like years later. So people have left Thailand for Vietnam now. That's how popular it is. So
yeah, I just want to save money for a minute and then,
exactly. And like I know it's a massive time difference and obviously there's going to be a culture shock, but $500 a month for a fucking penthouse apartment. I can't really complain about that. So yeah, look it up on what is it like? I went on Airbnb and I was just like, this is amazing. But anyway, so back to I've forgotten her fucking name. Truong Mai Lan, and the people involved.
I'm going to go with overall 89 for the corruption and her great idiotness.
Yeah, because ultimately, look, if you somehow manage to embezzle $1 billion, disappear. What are you fucking doing hanging around? Go to Venezuela, go to Iran, North Korea, go to a non-extradition country where Interpol, like, you can sit across the table from them and go, enjoy your coffee, motherfuckers. Like, just do that, right? Go to a country where they can't touch you. And I'm not encouraging anyone to embezzle anything. It's a terrible crime. It destroys lives. But if you are stupid enough to steal a portion of an entire country's income and still be in the fucking... Yeah, give it to... No, actually, don't give it to Alex Jones. He needs that money, apparently. No, fuck him. Take it from him. Take more money from Alex Jones, if anything. But no, like, if you are stupid enough to continuously steal money over a decade period of time, and so much money that is an open secret in, like, every fucking person knows that it's happening, you deserve some form of massive punishment because you didn't take that money and run with it.
Yeah.
Fuck, How stupid are you?
Every morning you wake up, somebody kicks you right in the ass.
Yeah.
That's how you start your day.
Exactly.
Like, what were you thinking? Come on, man.
Put it all in Dogecoin and disappear. Like, even that shit. Just pump it all into Ethereum or something, and you can disappear off the map. You'd be fine. But this woman didn't. They caught her, and she showed no remorse. And now they're like, we are going to make the ultimate example of you. So the corruption in this country that we've kind of turned a blind eye to for decades disappears, because who is going to want lethal injection? I think that's the one thing that billionaires are scared of, is the threat of death. They can take humiliation. Bernie Madoff didn't give a shit that, like, one of his sons died of leukemia and the other one killed himself as a result of his actions. He didn't care about that. He's in prison monopolizing the ramen supply. He doesn't give a shit about that. So if you threaten someone with lethal injection, suddenly they are sorry about everything, I feel like. So
we'll see. We'll see if it brings up the money that they haven't found.
Yeah, I feel like all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of holes that are dug up around her garden. Like, yeah, you know that play set that I've got over there? You just dig under that. There's like 5 billion under there. Just have a look around there,
Got it in the walls like Daniel Dancer.
Yes, that's going to be it. It's like, what's your insulation made of? Oh, yeah, it's a lot of green. And there's a bunch of Benjamins.
Dog in the walls.
Yeah, exactly. Just fucking gold comes tumbling out. Like that scene in The Simpsons, I'm quite strapped for money at the moment, and all the fucking money starts landing on Burns' head. It's really sad that someone is being put to death for this, but there was going to come a point in time, I feel like, in the world we live in, with an ever-increasing amount of billionaires, corruption, inequality, that eventually some government or some body was going to do something so extreme that people were like, okay, we can't do this anymore because look what they're starting to do. They're starting to chop off heads. The guillotine has come back out again. So that's what they're doing. They're like, we will go French Revolution on you. So stop stealing from us. You know, stop making us look bad.
See how this works.
Yeah, let's see if that money shows up. I don't think it is. I think the kind of person she seems to be, when they're like, listen, if you give us some of that money, we won't stick you with the needle. She'll be like, fuck you. I'm not letting you have that now. You've shown your top card. Put it in me. I don't care. Kill me. You know, you'll never see that many again. I'm doing it to fucking spite you at this point. Yeah, I've covered my tracks well, even though I'm clearly quite stupid. So, you know, fuck you. Stick the needle in me. See what happens. People will continue to steal from you. You know, you build a 10-foot wall, someone will create an 11-foot ladder. Fuck you. I'm taking the money.
That seems accurate.
Yeah. I feel like that's what she's going to turn around and say, like, fuck y'all. You know, that's the ultimate one. So, skibbity-doo toilet. I'm taking the money with me into the afterlife. Oh, God. Yay. We're a meme now. So there we go. So that's Truong My Lan. I hope I'm saying that right. It stole.
Better you than me.
Yeah, there was so much in that actually I'm glad that wasn't super complicated. But yeah, Truong My Lan, who stole $44 billion or something like that, at least 12 billion. You know, so she stole either 3 or 9% of the country's entire wealth.
That's so much money.
So much money. 730 billion is the equivalent in the US, if that helps you. Thank you guys so much for hanging around. It's been great. We've had a really active chat tonight. So thank you to Kron for coming in. Thank you to Kimberly for hanging around as well. Really great to catch up with you again. Toasterzoid, great to see you again, and all the people who tried to sell us fake bots on cheap. Thank you for dropping by. That was funny. And if you guys would like to join our Patreon and get access to behind the scenes special recordings that only our patrons get, and also free gifts and yearly gifts as well, and behind the scenes access to scripts from every episode, and footage from like stuff we do in our daily lives, like Derek's holiday in Colorado. You get to see that. And also I've got a timed post of Margot being adorable with her piggy after her spaying. If you want to see all of that, go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots and join one of our many tiers. $3, $5, $20, or the Adam Newman $15,000 tier if you're feeling particularly generous. And you get access to all of that. And thank you to our wonderful patrons, our OG patron, Jesse Christ, Andrew Zavara, Kimberly Johnson, Dilly Baub, and of course, our new patron, Silent Crisis, also known as Dan, who's from the UK. That's really cool. I'm just looking at your information now. I won't dox you, don't worry, but you're from the UK, Dan. It's really cool to have you join us. Welcome aboard, and I hope your gift gets there and the Patreon don't fuck it up like they did for Kimberly. So yeah, but thank you all. And also, if you'd like to follow us on Instagram, we occasionally post on there. Go to Instagram and look up History's Greatest Idiots. It's at History's Greatest Idiots. Same thing on YouTube. If you'd like access to all of our videos, you can search for at History's Greatest Idiots on YouTube. We're right there. And join the 183 people who have subscribed to our YouTube. And sometimes some of those people hang around just to shout at us for calling Henry Ford a fascist, because he's a fascist, or he was. So thank you so much. We will be back. So I have a bit of a special holiday planned in a couple of weeks. It's my mother's birthday. So I'm going back to spend a week over there with the family and hang out with people and catch up with people and stuff. So
nice.
Yeah, so if it's okay, Derek will be recording next weekend as well, so that I don't have to rush it on that week. And yeah, this will be released as a words as an actual podcast this weekend, and we will be back the next weekend as well to record it live. So if you'd like to join us live, you can join us on YouTube. We record these live every time, and on Twitch as well, but mostly we like it on YouTube because You guys are fun and interactive. So join us there, and we'll see you next weekend. That will be released the following week as a podcast. But until then, I got there in the end. Until then, Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Goodbye, everybody.
And we'll see you all again very soon. Take care now. Bye.